Hi everyone, welcome back to the Offensive Line. I'm here today with my guest, Hannah.
Hi.
Who will be sharing with us her thoughts on the question, what brings you fulfillment? Now these are questions that you can use in evangelism conversations, and we're going to be talking about how you can use this particular one and what it actually does and accomplishes in evangelism conversations. So, Hannah, do you have any thoughts on this one? Do you want to talk a little bit about your experience using this one?
Sure. Yeah, I think that a lot of times when we start thinking of how to start conversations with evangelism, we just kind of feel like the topic's going to be very heavy. So I like this question of what brings you fulfillment because it kind of starts out lighthearted. Yeah, you can kind of just go right off of oh, hey, how was your weekend?
Yeah, it's a good kind of segue from instead of just a immediate pointed what do you think about God, or what why do you sin, or something like that.
Yeah, it's not so heavy-handed.
Yeah.
It just can really kind of flow naturally from a weekend conversation. You spent the weekend on the lake or on the beach. Oh, is that what brings you fulfillment? Or if that's not it, what does?
Yeah.
And you can just kind of go from there with that. So I really appreciate it. And then you can kind of just really simply ease into what about long-term fulfillment, or the meaning of life, but maybe in a somewhat natural feeling way. If they find fulfillment in something temporary, like drinking with their buddies or things like that, you kind of is that all life is? And kind of just go from there.
No, that's a good point that you bring up, because a lot of times in the workplace, right, we're always talking about, oh, how was your weekend? Expecting that whoever you're them asking you, you share about something fun and something that you enjoy. So then you can also share about a popular question that Pastor Chris, one of our pastors, always says is, I went to church. Why don't you go to church? So we can talk about how that brings us fulfillment, and that brings us that's something that we gives us meaning, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too, just being able to always answer, I went to church, or I was, spending time in ministry, doing different things, and just kind of talking about it with joy. It shows what brings you fulfillment. If they see you excited about studying God's word and things like that, it's not something that they expect. It's oh, you like studying, or you like talking about the Bible. It takes people off guard. So it was interesting, actually. A couple months ago, we had a new employee start, and they're eating lunch with my team. Kind of just randomly came in and started eating with us. And my other coworkers vouched for my life and what brought me fulfillment without me saying anything to the new coworker. And it was
another
just
method. Instead of you evangelizing,
they were setting it up for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without you even prompting them to. You weren't even hey, nudge, can you?
Yeah, they're not even Christian, so it was kind of shocking to me. But yeah, God's sovereign, and before I really even had to try to start digging with this new coworker, the foundation's already laid.
Sure.
Because that's your life in this ministry.
Yeah.
So that could be really helpful.
In what kind of situation would you use this question as opposed to other questions, for example, where you would talk directly about what do you believe about God, or what do you believe about truth? Talk about epistemology, talk about metaphysics or something, but you would start going after just what kind of triggers you to know oh, I'm going to ask this question next, to kind of get them to have an inroads to the gospel.
Yeah, I think like I said, starting off with the fulfillment part, that's an easy question. I think sometimes people naturally bring up harsher things, and then you can kind of easily flow from there. I had a coworker say something along the lines of oh, this is why I'm not going to heaven, or things like that, and I just took that opportunity to jump in and be
this is how you can.
Yeah, what qualifies going to heaven versus not going to heaven, going to hell?
Yeah.
Just quickly jump in and ask what they believe is qualifying for heaven and hell, and that's a heavy topic.
Yeah.
And another time I had a coworker come sit next to me and say, I'm really struggling with my faith, and I was well, if you're Catholic, you should be struggling with your faith because it's not true. It's not biblical.
Yeah.
And we got in really deep really fast. And so I think, you kind of gauge the person, and obviously at work you do have to be wise. If they're bringing up the topic, for me, that means the gate's open, and I can go through and ask the harder questions.
Sure.
So yeah, just using wisdom and kind of seeing where people are at, and even like their tone at the moment, just being able to and ask initial questions of how their day's going and things like that kind of helps you gauge where you can go. And so that's one way I kind of determine what route to take. And
Sure.
Some people are just a lot more blunt, and so you can be a lot more blunt with them and get in there and ask hard questions. So yeah, just having a relationship with someone and knowing where they're at can really help you determine what road to go down.
That's a good point that you bring up, Hannah, about getting to know people and having conversations and always listening and being on the lookout for what it is that they might share that brings them fulfillment, things like that. Because you asking questions kind of means that you're having conversation with them, right? It's not just you talking at them and then them listening, and then you drop the gospel and then you leave, but you have conversations, you get to know them better, you get to develop a relationship with them. And I think one thing that I've even talked about before is how our evangelism needs to be normal. Some people are so awkward about it and that it's so forced almost. It's like you turn on the on switch of my EV mode, my evangelism mode. But just be normal, just talk about the things that excite you, and evangelism, the gospel, you're passionate about, you're excited about, it should just naturally flow from your life.
One of the things that brings us to Christ is love and kindness from the Father, and I think people just seeing that in your life and in your character, it brings them in because they can't find it anywhere else. And so many people are looking for genuine love, and that's what you are offering them when you're telling them the gospel. So if you already kind of have that in your heart and in your character, and you're living it out and just showing concern for them in their life, yeah, that opens them up a lot more. And so yeah, it's not like you're smacking them with the Bible when you're first telling them the gospel. It's it's a natural thing. It's a natural thing that we're talking about our lives and living for the Lord. I had a different coworker recently who he said something about just different people reaching out to him at our church because he started coming to some of our events. And I was like, oh yeah, it's terrible in life when you have friends. And just being sarcastic with him and stuff, dude, he turned that changed the relationship by me just making fun of him for me claiming to be his friend, basically. And within a week, I had been trying to get him to come to our Bible study, and he came to our Bible study last night.
Wow.
And yeah, we got to talk in small groups, and another Bible study individual knowing that he wasn't saved and just asking me very pertinent questions. We could share a lot without feeling we're putting a lot on him or anything like that. Just having that conversation and us loving each other as Christians, that's not something that's out in the world, and that is something that people are looking for.
No, that's really cool that you're able to kind of build a relationship with him. I think another good point that you brought up is that we don't just upon first initial meeting we smack them with Bible, and then we just share the gospel, and then it's like, okay, that's it. But I think over time there's wisdom to even building a friendship with them, doing things that they enjoy doing. Obviously, of course, not again, wisdom, right? So not doing things that let's go to the bar and let's go drink so I can evangelize to him or something like that, which blows my mind that some people actually think that that's wise to do. But actually building a friendship with him, building rapport, and humor is something that you can use. I know, Hannah, as an individual, that you're very humorous, and you really like having these kind of interactions with people, and I really enjoy them as well, with having with you and other people too. So even a case where even humor and quirkiness can factor into our evangelism, right? Because our personality should change, in a sense, should affect the way that we evangelize and have conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And people can tell when you're being yourself and being genuine.
Yeah. Well, this is, again, the offensive line, and on this episode we learned a little bit about Hannah and how she uses this question, this evangelism question, and some of the opportunities that she's had for evangelism already, talking about 2 instances in the workplace. And I think as we, hopefully in future episodes, as you hear a little bit more from other people in our church, other examples of evangelism, Hannah being one of them, that we can, hopefully these will be helpful to you as you continue to grow and develop your own skill set, your own toolkit in a sense of questions that you can pull out for evangelism, a playbook, if you will. So again, this is Offensive Line. I'm Hanson with our guest Hannah. If you haven't yet liked this video, please give us a like. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe. You can check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Please leave a comment down below with your thoughts, any questions you might have for Hannah. So again, we are the Offensive Line, and we'll see you next week.